over to the screens. So you should see that in a few seconds. I want to say welcome to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, I guess, virtually in the metaverse. It's a first for me, as I'm sure it's a first for some of you. My name is Darren Dore. I am the digital anthropologist at CyberSafeTT. We are a non-profit organization, and we speak to youths and adults as well about being safe in the online platforms. And the metaverse and this platform is no different. So some of you may be familiar with the term metaverse, but do we really know what the metaverse is? I'm going to draw your attention to the screen and the slides. And the metaverse, in its simplest terms, is an online space that allows us to interact in a more immersive way than a traditional website. And I'm sure, you may hear more about this and some tools and tips and tricks about interacting in this environment later on today. But I'm sure some of you are also quite familiar with interacting in a similar environment that you may have had, the ability to speak with and even move around together with some other team members or team players. So some of you in the audience might have heard about, some of these two games here, Fortnite and Call of Duty, and even Roblox, which might be more popular with the younger audience. These are all first-person interactive games, and it allows you to chat and engage in team play. And just in the same way, there are rules of engagement when you play these games. So, for example, there are certain times in a Call of Duty session where you might probably be very quiet and not make any noise so as to not give away your location. And it might apply in other areas as well. Just in the same way where you need to sort of sit quietly and listen on the presentation as if you were in a real world environment. That's what we're doing today also, you know, sort of being real in the virtual world. So there are a few things that you should know as you engage into this space, and that's what we want to cover today, very, very briefly though. So the rules of engagement. Get to know your world. This VRPark platform might be new to some of us. There may be, certain keyboard shortcuts that you might want to remember offhand if you're on a Windows machine. For example, you can actually press the F1 button to do a wave, like how I'm doing right now. You want to probably play around with this a little bit, before, because you don't want to be interacting with someone and miss, or inadvertently click on the wrong button. So, suppose I was supposed to wave at you and I end up doing this instead. Probably look a little odd, right? So these interactions will be, something that we have to be aware of as well in terms of how we engage. So F4 is clap, F7 is dance, F3 is shake hands. These are things that, you'll probably want to become familiar with so you don't embarrass yourself and end up dancing on stage like I just did. Now, if you're using a headset, for example, like a VR headset, you will want to check your surroundings, and at least let someone else know that you are engaging in that type of activity. Now, remember your microphone can be on or off. You have full control of that. And you want to ensure that you are aware that it's muted most of the time so that you don't disturb, other folks in the environment who may want to listen on to what's actually going on, right? Yeah, just like that. So we would also want to, be aware that if you're using a headset as well, check your surroundings near you. You may tend to be using your hands to gesture to get certain things done instead of the keyboard. And you may have the tendency of actually knocking things down. So we don't really want that happening. So there are a few things that you want to learn about your environment, and I think later on, Mr. Frontin might actually speak about engaging into the VR park environment in a bit more detail. But here's where we get into where my forte comes in, and that's being, a little on the side of metaverse etiquette and knowing how to interact and engage. As with any environment that you want to engage in, you want to be polite. That's at the core of your communication skills and interaction in any space. Microphone etiquette, the same way in which you would have been told to turn your mics off in Zoom and in Teams and so on, you want to do the same thing in this area as well. And let's be forgiven, right? Because not everyone here might know the environment. For example, while interacting earlier on, you might walk in front of someone and you're trying to figure out what's the the keyboard click for waving and you can't figure it out and the person just walks away. That might be an awkward interaction that you can avoid if you become a bit more familiar. But I'm here to tell everyone here, listen, just give everyone a bit more time, you know, to interact. We are not all immediate experts. Some of us may be learning these gestures, and be prepared for some awkward moments of silence, right? We also have to bear in mind that internet bandwidth may also play a role in factoring someone's experience in this particular space. So these are all things that you may not have had to take into consideration in Zoom or Teams, but in this type of virtual reality environment, you will definitely want to pay attention to it. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We have some experienced users here, and then we would have some those who are, maybe intermediate. They may have more ideas as to what to do. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. There is a chat area to do that. And listen to some of the advice from the presenters. You may be doing something that you might not be aware of, and they may be able to tell you, some do's and don'ts. Now, here's an interesting fact or point. As the metaverse environment evolved, individuals realized that, hey, social distancing is something that we also need to consider in this environment as well. And it's not only, applicable to real life for what we have been doing for the last couple of years. So what you have found is that sometimes we may be walking alongside someone or trying to get someone's attention in the metaverse, and we end up staying a little too close to them, using hand gestures, and those hand gestures might seem to be, or almost getting too close to the individual. There have been reports actually of grouping of individuals in the metaverse because of improper use of hand gestures. We don't want to have anyone feeling uncomfortable or anyone feel like you're stalking them. So a rule of thumb: just keep a nice distance between participants, the friends that you might be meet in this environment when you're trying to speak to them and engage them in this area. So again, something that you probably may not have thought of, and as you are getting yourself more accustomed into this area, it's things that you want to be aware of as well. So just as in any virtual environment, we also have to pay attention to cyberbullying. I think it's a bit more prominent now because as you become a bit more familiar and comfortable in using the environment, particularly since you have your headset and you can speak to anyone, you may forget that you're actually interacting in an environment and these are actual real people that you're speaking with. And sometimes you may try to get someone's attention or someone is taking too long to actually respond to you. You may say something that might come out to be to the extent of harassment even, or even just being unpolite. So you definitely don't want to engage in any sort of cyberbullying activities. Sometimes these environments are recorded. Maybe the session today is being recorded as well. Things that you say here can actually, you know, be used against you in any particular instance if you may have said something inappropriately or tried to engage in some sort of activity that might fall under cyberbullying. So things like hate speech, harassment, outing, and so on. These are things that are applicable in the regular virtual environment, the online worlds that we are accustomed in, social media spaces, but it's also quite applicable here. And it's not that it cannot happen. So definitely we want to ensure that we keep it clean, keep it sanitized, be polite, and also, if someone is trying to offer help as well, you definitely don't want to ignore or be rude to that individual. So these are all real things that we need to be aware of. As we get into the area of using the environment, sometimes, it can become so consuming that we really forget, that we're actually interacting in this space. And this really happens, I think more so if you have a VR headset on and you're really immersed into the environment and you absolutely forget everything around you. You can easily lose track of time. To a certain extent, it can even distort your sense of reality. There are so many different rooms right within the VPark world that IDB has offered to you that you can think that you want to come here for 5 minutes and you end up spending a couple hours well, and it can have some negative impact on the other things that you might have to do. So just be prepared. Maybe have a little timer on your phone saying, listen, I need to come out of here within the next 30 minutes or hour, or depending on how long your session is. But it's a real thing, internet addiction in this area, because it's a lot easier for you to lose track of time. There are also some physical side effects, but I don't think that we are going to engage into this environment so long, at least not in this particular scenario, but maybe in the future as you interact in the virtual spaces more often. These are things that you want to be aware of as well. Now, there are the extreme ends of things in terms of cyber grooming and socializing in playgrounds, and these are things that could also happen here. Especially these are all strangers that we are interacting with. Um, but I'm sure that we will all be very professional in the way in which we approach others here. And it's almost a closed environment, so we can probably be safe that some of these activities that happen in the real world may not happen within our nice little VR park. But just so that these are all real things that can still take place as we interact in these spaces. So coming on almost to the end of our conversation today, I want you to pay attention to your avatar. And I was taking a look at, how some of you actually created your avatars. And, I definitely want to give everyone, a round of applause, for an excellent job in coming up with some really, really fantastic get-ups. I'm seeing some shades here. I'm seeing some sweater vests. Everyone is looking on point, and I think you did a fantastic job there. So you're allowed to, even create a completely different persona. My point, however, here is this actually becomes part of your digital footprint. So how you present yourself here, even down to the nicknames that you might give to yourself, that's actually what someone might look at and interpret in terms of, that was not the nickname that I was expecting of this individual. You are representing certain organizations, certain youth organizations. So you want to present your best face forward. Something that you need to look at as well in the future, the different platforms that work in the VR space are looking at sharing avatars across platforms. So that this avatar that you're seeing of me today, it could actually be shared across different types of platforms. I wonder how that would actually work. For example, if I look like this in a Call of Duty environment, might be kind of weird, but we would definitely need to look at, a particular type of getup avatar that's applicable across the board. Remember, it becomes part of your digital footprint, and your digital footprint is basically what anyone can actually search about you on the internet. So you want that to be a nice, clean, and good perspective. So the future of the metaverse, I know that we're just starting here, but it's something that we have to consider because as we engage into the space, we want to lay a good foundation. So we just spoke about, the possibility of avatars being shared from one environment to the next. If you're using these headsets, for example, Oculus, at some point they might be able to sense your facial expressions. So whereas in the Zoom space, you can turn off camera and be making all kind of facial expressions, and the presenter has no idea what you're thinking in truth. That can actually change right now, and people can actually sense that you're disappointed or angry or upset, or even frustrated with what is going on. And then, lastly, there's the thought of electromyographic actions where you don't even need to use your keyboard or use your mouse to actually make an action, but sometimes it can happen based on what you think. And again, these are new things that are happening in this space, and it's good that you understand where this is going so that when you start to use it in this first instance that IDB has provided to you, you get a good sense of how to use it properly so that when it becomes a lot more advanced, folks that I'm seeing here, such as Donnell and Candice and Cassandra and all of you, you can definitely work towards and feel free to be almost expert users in these type of environments as we go along. So I wish everyone here the best of success. I hope you have a lot of fun. I would like to say, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to give you some guidelines and tips and tricks. And I hope that, you have a very productive and a wonderful time in this space. So thank you. Back to you, Latoya.